Welcome back to Everything We Know. Earlier today, a new poll just dropped from Quinnipiac University on the Texas governor's race. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. The high level takeaway is that 48% of voters support Republican incumbent Greg Abbott, while 43 support Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke. Greg Abbott leads by 5 points um, across the state right now. We're going to go through this poll and pull out some things um, based on the questions that were asked. I'm going to go down here to the actual questions. If the election for governor were being held today, a big top of the line question, and the candidates were Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat who ran for president in 2020 and ran against Ted Cruz for Senate in 2018. Prior to that, he was a three-term congressman out in the Texas 16th district representing El Paso. He got within 3% of Beto O'Rourke in 2018. Now he's running against Greg Abbott, who's running for his third term as governor of Texas. What we see here is overwhelmingly Republicans are breaking for Abbott, 90 to 5 to 4 that don't know. Democrats, 96% of them are breaking for O'Rourke. Comes down to independents. Who are they going to be voting for? It's close, but there's a 6-point lead there for Abbott. When we look at men and women, men are much more likely to go with Abbott, whereas women much more likely to break toward Beto O'Rourke. Also, you can see young people, 18 to 34. O'Rourke has a massive lead there, whereas every other age group, Greg Abbott is in the lead. So O'Rourke appeals to a much younger demographic than Abbott does. Favorability ratings, Abbott is +1 overall. Obviously, does a lot better with Republicans. Beto O'Rourke, pretty much the exact opposite. Democrats tend to like him. Republicans tend not to like him or haven't heard enough about him. And his favorability rating amongst independents really skews it 5 points in the negative. So he's 5 points unfavorable here. In terms of the way Greg Abbott is handling his job as governor, he's got a 2% disapproval fueled by those independents as well, that 9-point disapproval by independents in the state. And so that's going to really come into play later on. We're going to skip down through past Ted Cruz, John Cornyn, down to Joe Biden. Joe Biden's disapproval rating, 61% disapprove, 33% approve, including nearly 2/3 of independent voters. What that means is that Greg Abbott has to not run against Beto O'Rourke, who has a reasonable favorability rating amongst independents. He's got to run his campaign against Joe Biden. That's one of the reasons why he has refused to directly engage with Beto O'Rourke throughout this entire campaign. It's been about the economy. It's been about how the White House has been doing rather than about how the Capitol has been doing in Austin. And that's the way to do it if he wants to succeed. Skip down through a couple of these. As we go issue by issue, gun violence, even in Texas, Joe Biden not doing well on that. Even amongst Democrats, a full quarter believe that he's not doing a good job on that. They disapprove of that. 63% of independents. That is huge. In terms of gun ownership, those that have a gun in the household, 68% disapprove. 74% of those who actually own guns disapprove. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking city, suburb, or rural, across the board, disapproval on the way that Joe Biden is handling gun violence. When you look at Greg Abbott, once again, large disapproval, not quite the numbers that we see from Joe Biden. And so Greg Abbott has to be running not against Beto O'Rourke directly, but be framing it as Greg Abbott and Texans against Joe Biden and the Washington elite. That's the way he's going to have to run this campaign. Republicans tend to approve of the way he's handling gun violence. Democrats almost unanimously disapprove. Independents also massively disapprove as well. And then when we get down to gun owners, even gun owners, tend to have a large number of them disapproving. In fact, um, in the city, huge disapproval, suburbs, huge disapproval. His The only thing keeping up his approval ratings amongst gun owners are rural gun owners or people from the rural parts of Texas, which tend to vote Republican anyway. Now, when we look at the two questions about honesty, what does that mean for these candidates? Well, clearly, Republicans think that Greg Abbott is honest. Democrats think he's not. What it comes down to is the large independent population in the state of Texas. And nearly half of independents in the state of Texas don't believe that Greg Abbott is an honest individual. And so that's really going to hurt him um, when it comes down to the November election. However, it's pretty evenly split in terms of whether independents would say that Greg Abbott has good leadership skills or not. Republicans tend to like him; he's their guy here in uh, here in Texas that we're looking at. For Democrats, even 14% say that he's a reasonably good leader. 82%, as expected, say that he's not. Overall, independents tend to lean toward him not caring about average Texans, um, which could come back to bite him in the butt come November. Now, when we look at Beto O'Rourke on the exact same three questions, basically exact opposite, you see that he's got pretty similar numbers in terms of whether he's honest, just a few less people responding and actually having an opinion on it. 15% don't know. Um, Independents tend to think that he's not honest. A lot of that comes from some of his changing on the issues from the 2018 campaign to the 2020 campaign and now to the 2022 campaign. Three different offices, three different stances on a lot of different issues. And that's really not been great for him to hold on to those more moderate voters or individuals who are independent. It's done a lot to shore up his base, not to really help out with reaching across the aisle and grabbing those independents or those that lean Republican. In terms of good leadership skills, we see most independents say no, he doesn't have good leadership skills. He's minus 2% on the spread there, and then contrary to some of those earlier questions, most Texans believe, including a sizable portion of Republicans, believe that Beto O'Rourke actually cares about Texans. Now, whether that caring translates to people coming out to vote for him, that remains to be seen, and we'll kind of draw a few more conclusions as we go throughout this particular poll. This question number 19 is very important. What is the most urgent issue facing Texas today? In total, you can see that the Texas-Mexico border really dominates. At 29% of Texans believe that that is the big issue of the day, followed by 19% of the economy, 17% at gun policy. Nothing else really comes close across the state. For Republicans, the two big issues are going to be the Texas-Mexico border and the economy. And it's similar over here with independents. Texas-Mexico border and the economy, followed up by gun policy and abortion as well. Republicans, according to this poll, abortion is not a big issue for them. So overturning Roe v. Wade is not going to push Republicans out to vote. However, it might push a lot of Democrats out to vote because that is what they gave as their second biggest, most important issue that they cared about this election cycle. So gun policy is number one. Abortion policy is number two. The economy and healthcare are tied there at number three. Gun policy is number three for independents. So we talked a couple of days ago about what the Senate was putting together in terms of their legislation for gun policy. So it'd be interesting to see when that passes, when it gets to the Senate, and what the national narrative around gun policy will be come November. Gun policy narrative tends to go up and down, especially over the summer. More mass shootings occur over the summer. So it's going to be in the consciousness of the voters through at least August. But whether that will move on into November remains to be seen. Abortion, we're likely to get a ruling on that here in the next week or so, which will more likely cause Democratic voters to turn out um, and really give Democrats a reason to get out and vote this November that we really haven't seen in the primaries to this point. In terms of Texas-Mexico border and the economy, that tells um, Republican strategists and should tell Abbott's team that's what he has to run on. And those are issues that he can direct toward Biden, contrast his own policies with Biden's policies, and he'll do pretty well in Texas. When we get down into who would do a better job handling the economy, big, important question. Most independents, 51% of independents compared to 38, which almost directly mirrors the total in Texas. Most Texans think that Abbott would do a better job handling the economy. So big point in Abbott's favor there. Coronavirus, most people don't list it as one of their top issues, but even in that category where Republicans tend not to perform very well, Abbott is outperforming O'Rourke by 11% on that question. The U.S.-Mexican border, Abbott ahead by 15%. So on the issues that people care about in the state of Texas, Abbott tends to be winning there. And then even on the issue of abortion, O'Rourke is only up by 2 points, which is incredible considering that Republicans tend not to care a whole lot. When we looked up here at what their most important issues were, only 1% listed it as their most important issue. So Republicans probably not going to be single issue voters this time around, or at least not when it comes to the question on abortion policy. You'll see once again those younger generations will be voting more toward O'Rourke on the issue. The older generations will be voting more toward Abbott on the issue. And then for those who are religious, Abbott, who does have a lot of Catholic family members, is only leading in white evangelicals and Protestants, but not in Catholics, which is interesting for O'Rourke to take that. Gun policy, interestingly, Abbott also ahead on that, led primarily by these older voters, especially when we get down to households with guns, gun ownership. Suburbs tend to think O'Rourke would do better on that. City, but that is drastically outweighed by the rural populations in Texas. Election laws, Abbott winning on that one. A lot of people, 45% think that Greg Abbott is too conservative. 42% say he's about right. And there is a 7% contingent who think that Greg Abbott is too liberal. On the other side of things, 47% of Texans, including 53% of independents, say that Beto O'Rourke is too liberal for Texas. Under the about right category, you get 38% overall, 35% of independents. Those are the big issues here. One other thing that I'll point out is that in Texas, 59% of Texans agree with the 1973 Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. 35% disagree. That very closely mirrors independents in Texas. That's what you really got to care about, is how do the independents think, because those are the ones who are going to sway elections. Those are the ones who tend to lean Republican, that have the opportunity to cross over and vote for Beto O'Rourke. So everything we're looking at here, it comes back to the question up there at the top of the poll, the very first question that they ask, and I'm glad they didn't waste time getting to it, which is if the election for governor were being held today, the candidates were Beto O'Rourke for the Democrat and Greg Abbott for the Republicans. For whom would you vote? 5% lead that Abbott has. I expect that to be about what we'll see come November. Abbott does seem to have the support on all the issues across the board. People think that he's the better equipped candidate to handle um, the issues that Texans really do care about. Um, O'Rourke has to pull Abbott into a discussion directly one-on-one, Abbott versus O'Rourke. Otherwise, if Abbott keeps running this anti-Biden campaign, that's going to win over on issues like the U.S.-Mexican border and the economy, which are the two issues that Texans care the most about. So there you go. We've run through today's poll, gone through all the issues, and that's what all the indication says is going to happen. So thank you very much for joining us today. If you like this analysis, go ahead and click the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, or check us out on Twitter for more political analysis on the Texas governor's race, other races in Texas and across the country. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm Matthew Lucci, and this has been Everything We Know.